who is not here. Is Senator Kitchell here yet? I think she'll be entering momentarily, I hope. Okay, it is Thursday. And we're going to disregard everything today. I'm going to take up the helmet law. I want to pass the helmet law this morning. So everything else is going to be on hold. Okay. April Fool. All right. Okay.
I'll tell you what, Senator Benning just wherever he's at, he just really you got him all going.
Yeah, I thought it would be fun to have him listening this morning.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to. Michelle is in control today. As we know, next week we'll be getting into every day on the AOT bill. But today, our first item is what is H33? Is that what we're talking about? Transportation, miscellaneous changes of laws relating to transportation. Michelle, are you leading on that this morning, or?
Well, Senator, H433, the transportation bill, has a lot of elements, as you heard from Anthea yesterday. And today we are going to focus on a few changes to the Mileage Smart program, which is overseen by Capstone. And we have with us Sue Minter and Paul Zabriskie. And I'm going to turn it over to them to just talk about how we're doing and the modifications that were put in by the House for the Mileage Smart program.
Okay, that's what we're talking about. Mileage Smart. I know we got a few things on the agenda. Sue Minter is with us this morning. Is that correct?
Morning, Senator. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
It's snowing in April, so that's a good beginning.
That's the April Fool's joke. There you go.
That is the joke on you.
Well, welcome this morning. And
thank you.
What are you going to tell us interesting this morning?
Well, I'm going to tell you something interesting, which is that the project that we're working on isn't as much an infrastructure project as a way to bring more fuel-efficient cars to folks who really need better transportation. So, you know, I've spent most of my career thinking a lot about transportation, roads and bridges, and how to do them faster and better, and expanding public transit. And this is really, how do we expand transportation for people who really are of low income? So it's an anti-poverty and a climate-related project. So, and it really, I just wanted to orient you and not talk that much about it, because I want to leave the program director, Paul Zabriskie, to talk to you about the details. But, you know, this really started in your committee, particularly with the advocacy of Senator Perchlik and Senator Ashe, when there was a push for electric vehicle subsidies. And we suggested, and your committee really embraced the idea that if we're subsidizing efficient cars for people who can afford all electric, let's think about the folks who can't afford those, but also literally are trapped in poverty without access to transportation. So that's the beginning. This started as a pilot program, and we are a community action agency, Capstone Community Action. Our counterpart in Burlington and up in Franklin and Grand Isle is CVOEO. And we have partners in Brock, in Rutland and Bennington Brock, in Southwest, which is SEVCA, and in the Northeast Kingdom, NECA. So we all work together. And so we've all been trying to push this program forward, but Capstone is in the lead. And we started a program, Mileage Smart, which is an online application to help low-income people have subsidies to afford used, high efficiency vehicles, which can be electric or can be a hybrid. And so I just wanted to kind of remind you that this started with your committee. We had, I would say, a slow start, and we're just beginning when COVID hit. And as you can imagine, the car market has really fallen since then, but we are now building to what we think is a great trajectory. And what the House supported was our request to both roll over funds that were unspent from this fiscal year into the next fiscal year with an additional $600,000. I want to tell you that the Agency of Transportation has been a great partner. We're working closely because we're all learning together how this can work. And Marilyn Miller has really started to help champion this with her members, which is really the key, is the car dealers and the used car dealers. So we believe at the beginning of a program that we see success. And I'll let Paul Zabriskie, who runs the Weatherization and Climate Impact Program for Capstone, really give you the details. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Sue. Good morning. Paul Zabriskie, Climate Impact and Weatherization at Capstone Community Action. I thought I would start off this morning by just talking a little bit about our foundation. And we originally put this program together. It had very little administrative funding. So we designed it to be sort of an online shopping experience where somebody applies through a website and as much as possible using web automation to reply to emails and sort of keep the process moving in a way that required as little hands-on as possible. What we found is that doesn't fully serve the market. The folks that we're working with, some of them have real limitations in terms of just the technology, don't have computers in the home, don't have access to the internet. But very often we're dealing with people who have complex challenges with financing and getting almost all of the projects we've worked with involve loans. And many of the people we're working with have had a difficult history with the financial industry. We had originally assumed that we would have one FTE running this program, and that's fairly accurate in that we need to have the phone staff to have somebody in front of a computer pretty much 40 plus hours a week to serve this market. What we found is that one FTE, we have to make sure that individual is actually taking time off, that there is an emotional component to running this program where as we're trying to assist people in their financial lives, we are sort of getting trying to think of the best phrasing for this, but the staff that are doing this job are hearing people's stories in a way that they need to engage the family, the household, the individual, and understand their predicament, and then help sort of navigate how do we solve for the problem at hand, which is I don't have a car, or my car is expensive and I need an alternative that I can afford. So we actually need full-time staffing on the phones while people are taking their vacation on holiday, et cetera. So there's been a number of pieces of learning about what it really takes to run this program. And it still is very much a human service component to what we're doing, even though it's really about transportation. It's about mobility. It's about trying to get people to work, to be able to get to daycare and then get to work. Just the challenges that people have. We launched right at the front end of COVID about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, when the instability was sort of rippling through the economy. Nobody in their right mind who had limited means was taking loans at that point in time. So we shut the program down basically for 4 or 5 months and restarted in September. And I'd like to share with you sort of a production graph, if I can figure out the technology of screen sharing here. If Liz can give me access to screen sharing. we've seen incredible growth in the program. It started very slow. The rollout, the communications with car dealers, all these components were really critical in starting to develop. Thank you, Liz. Starting to develop some momentum, but on your screen should be a graph that came to me early this morning with our production through yesterday. And what you'll see is the diamonds are the number of cars incentivized in the month. And January is an outlier. It's just a very dead month in the car industry in general, historically, particularly with the models that we're working with. Lowest sales of the year, January. But other than that, what we see is a production where we're increasing the number of cars per month at a rate of 2 to 3 over the previous month, and spending is the blue bars, which is sort of tracking that. That's the incentive. We had budgeted for a 1.5 increase, so we're well ahead of budget right now in terms of the acceleration we're seeing in incentives. We originally, back in January, believed that we were looking at a $440,000 carryover at the end of fiscal 21. Right now, that carryover is projected to be closer to $353,000. So we're growing quickly, and if the trend continues, we're concerned that the $600,000 that the House appropriated towards this project to roll on top of what we anticipated was another $440,000, nominally $1 million program next year, is actually looking like a program that'll be $1.17 million next year. So we're asking the Senate if we can increase the allocation from $600,000 to $750,000 in fiscal 22's budget. And that's because of what we've learned over the course of the last 2 months and just seeing these trends. My greatest concern is that we run out of money, and we find ourselves having to stop the program. It destroys momentum. It creates all kinds of confusion with the car dealers and the consumers to start and stop these programs. So that's sort of the first topic I'd like to address, is just funding next year. I understand why the administration, seeing these very low numbers in the early months, assume that this program didn't need additional funding, because it looked like in those early months, we'd be rolling over closer to $700,000, and we weren't using money, but $15,000, $20,000 a month. That is not the case. That what we're seeing is nearly $15,000 increase over the prior month between February and March.
Paul,
So
is that hybrid or just electric?
So let me change my screen to show you a little bit more about the mix of vehicles.
Okay.
Where'd it go? There it is. So this shows you the engine type. So a little over a third of the vehicles are straight EVs. These are primarily Bolts, Leafs, Hyundai Ion. That's pretty much most of there's a few other odd creatures in there, but they're full plug-in EVs. 12% are plug-in hybrids. Those are, a range of things, the Volt, the C-Max, there's a wide range of vehicles in that category right now. And you can see just about half are the hybrids, the Prius and like. There are none of the cars that have moved through this program have been just the traditional internal combustion engine.
Are there different rebates for the different sections? Higher?
There are not currently. And this is, I believe that we have to be evolving the program as we move along. One of our goals in evolving the program is to institute some sort of loan loss reserve, some mechanism that assists the folks who've really struggled with the finance industry to get financing. And we have some experience with these types of programs. We spent a little bit of time working with this in the House. Representative Savage was very helpful, and did a lot of work in sort of investigating this. And we've come to pretty much the conclusion that we should not use state monies for a loan loss reserve, that Capstone will go out and fundraise to try and put together an investment that can be used to manage and write down the risk of some high risk Vermonters so that we can help them get into loans and allow the incentive to reach folks who have really struggled with getting cars, to get them into some decent, reliable, safe transportation.
I have a question, Paul. This is Jane Kitchell. And looking at the vehicles breakdown, I remember the testimony that people with within the income brackets that we're talking about, they're really in the used car market. And I was just wondering, with the experience to date with the program, is this primarily what's happening, or are we, or are many of these actually new vehicles?
So none of the Mileage Smart is strictly used vehicles. Okay.
Okay. It was just used.
So these are all used.
Okay. All right. That answers that question. And so I just made a note. So
used ones out there.
What?
I'm amazed there's that many used ones on the market.
So we've seen here. I'll share another image of you, with you that gives you sort of.
If somebody could get there's no prohibition against a new vehicle. It's just that they don't have the money to get into that level.
Typically, they do not, or that the interest rates for those vehicles is prohibitive. What happens is that the Mileage Smart incentive essentially gives folks a greater equity stake in a used vehicle, and in doing that, they're able to get better interest rates and get newer vehicles than they might have typically. Oftentimes, folks are buying very old beaters, and as you can see from this image, the 2017 is the most common model year. Mm-hmm. And so they tend towards cars coming off of lease. What we've heard from the car dealers is that they're ramping up inventory that is eligible for this program. So they're at the auctions picking up the used Priuses. They're taking their option to retain vehicles coming off of lease and put them on their lots, as opposed to shipping them to out-of-state auctions. So we're seeing increased inventory. I think that trend is going to continue based on what the used car dealers are telling us. And that's really where the growth comes from. It is car salespeople, used car salespeople, understanding the program, understanding how uh, who qualifies, what vehicles qualify, and making an effort to have a selection of those vehicles on their lots available for people when they come shopping.
The looks like the rebates are between $35,000 and $5,000 on an average. What determines what the rebate's going to be? How much a rebate will be on a car? Or
So the incentive is 25% of the sale value of the car, up to $5,000. And there's a number of conditions that I won't dig into today unless you really want to get into the details of the. But the maximum sale price is the NADA clean retail value of the car. So we basically it has to be it can't be overbook sale, and 25% of the sale price. And then there may be trade-ins, there may be other folks have used their federal incentive or federal stimulus. Lots of different ways people have put together financing.
Yes, Senator Chittenden.
Did I hear you say, Paul, that you are looking to expand or request more money to hire another staff person to support the application process for people seeking this money? And then if so, I have a follow-up question.
So actually, the reason I think we're going to run out of funding is because of the incentives, not the staffing. I'll point out that the House put a 10% cap on administration. This is a program that runs on marketing. So there's sort of a base layer right now. Capstone is subsidizing the administration of the program because of previous caps that have been put on it. It is, we are determined to make a success of the program, and our budget right now looks like we will be spending about $25,000 of agency funds to carry this program to June 30th. Our budget for administration is actually 12%. In very low months, it's actually higher than 12% because we have a full-time equivalent that is sort of a fixed cost that we can't get around. And we have a marketing budget of between $1,500 and $2,000 a month, depending on the month, to sort of be present in the marketplace, because that's what it takes to be in the car business. So we would prefer 12% administrative limit, not 10%, so that we can actually run this program the way we feel it needs to be run and not have to subsidize it out of donor funds to Capstone. Did that address your question, sir?
It did. Just my follow-up question, comment really quick is that I'm not going to be the one to tell you how to run your or administer your office. I would just see a reason to push a lot of this assistance and expectations onto the dealers, the honorable dealers trying to make these sales happen, that if they want to get this subsidy, then they should upskill their staffs. And if Capstone tries to put the onus on the dealer trying to make the sale to have to follow the program. But again, I'm not getting into how you run your business. I just heard you say you needed more people to answer the phones. And so I was wondering what path you were going. I've talked so long. Good program.
I want to go back. Maybe we had discussion about this, and maybe Paul, and when you responded, Senator Chittenden, you can answer it. When we were talking about setting this program up, there was a lot of discussion that it was more than the actual transaction of the sale of the vehicle, that there's a lot of counseling and additional work to make sure that you're putting people, that their budgeting and their finances are understood and they have the ability to fulfill the commitments that they're getting into. So my recollection was that this is not just the incentives, but that there was because of the nature of the families, the very difficult financial circumstances, that there was an element of financial counseling that went with it. But if you could clarify that, because I think maybe that helps say what you're doing that might be different than what we might expect of a dealer who wants to make the wants to make the sale, but may not worry about whether it ends up not where it ends up going south, to be honest. So maybe if you could.
Yes,
But
I love
that was my recollection of a lot of our testimony that occurred at the time we were contemplating the program.
You're absolutely right. Thank you so much for raising that. If I could, just that, for us and the work that we do, which is helping lift people out of poverty, the car isn't just a mode of transportation and access to jobs. It's actually an asset that establishes credit so much for many of these people for the very first time. Paul has the numbers on how many people we have reached out to us and we've gotten through the application process and are eligible. It's over 180. But as you see, the number of cars successfully transferred is far lower. And that gap, you're right, Senator Chittenden, that we need to have partners with the dealers. And we're trying to get out to them. We're hampered on so many fronts because we would be driving door to door talking to them, but we can't because of COVID. So, we're slow. But the other point, to Senator Kitchell's point, we are working to help people successfully purchase and sustain a car. Many people might get a car and not be able to pay that loan, and they don't even understand what it means to be getting 20% interest and why and what their credit is. So for us, we work very hard at Capstone to have financial counseling go along with this program. Not every community action agency has an established financial counseling program. We have one because Northfield Savings Bank gave us 3 years to invest in this program, which I have to tell you, I think it's the most important thing we do right now, especially when you look at further stimulus dollars that are coming. People have not got the education to understand how to utilize resources, to budget, to finance, and especially to finance successfully a car. So that's the gap. And that's the kind of work we're also doing. And that's why this is incredibly valuable. When someone has the ability to finance a car and sustain it, because we coach them not only on that investment at the beginning, but why this is saving them money and that they have to have money in savings for maintenance. But we know these cars have fewer, lower maintenance costs. Sorry for the digression, but thank you for the question.
And I apologize if this has been answered, but what's the average price of these cars, would you say?
I can answer that question in about a minute.
Okay.
Yes.
Someone else, go ahead. If somebody else wants to ask a question, I'll
Senator
find
Brooks,
that
you have a
number.
question? Yes.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want us to go by this testimony without recognizing Paul's effort to sit in the witness chair in the committee room there. I think that's impressive. It's good for the new senators need to notice that.
That was his April Fool's joke.
Nice. Good job.
Well, thanks to the Sergeant at Arms.
Oh,
a co-conspirator.
I didn't see that. That's right. Thank you. We charge rent on that space,
Oh yeah, it's actually very comfortable.
Yeah.
It depends on what you're testifying on.
Right. We'll try to make it more uncomfortable, maybe.
Yeah.
So a quick question is, you're going to send the slides? I didn't see them on our website, but maybe that's in process or something. Paul?
No, I got this information as of late last night when the month closed. So I'd be happy to submit these images in a deck.
Okay. And I support Capstone's effort on what, admin is used kind of loosely. I think what you're doing is program delivery costs. I mean, sometimes when people just say admin, they think it's, the people in the back office, like doing the accounting, but
Are paying Sue a high salary.
right. Well, I hope we are, because she deserves that. But yeah, it's really just people doing the work of the program. So I don't know if that is really admin in the same way as some other programs are measured on an admin versus program delivery costs. But I have a larger question that's arising from the testimony yesterday and today, and maybe it's a question for Michelle. And hopefully she has a picture of herself over on the bench so we can have her weigh in from over there where she usually weighs in from. Maybe next time. But so I think I counted, there's like 7 or 8 different programs that we're working on. And so it's just an overall like coordination, because I see a lot of overlap with what Capstone's doing here with the Replace Your Ride, working with folks on trying to get them a mobility solution or whatever the term is we try to use. And then there's just all the other electric vehicles and then electric bikes and on-demand transit. And it just seems like we're getting further dissipated, not more coordinated. And it seems like with some of the work that Capstone is saying like needs to do with the dealers, there's that kind of market development that I know kind of Drive Electric Vermont sort of does, but so I'm interested in figuring out how we coordinate all this, and just we're making sure it is coordinated and we don't have different parts of state government trying to do things that aren't really helping what the other projects are trying to do. I don't know if that's come up at all, and maybe it's.
I think that's such a good point, Andy, and everything takes on a new program and then it appears like a labyrinth. All I can think of is so much of what we do is ad hoc, expand. And pretty soon it's like, I use the analogy of Minoan architecture. You've got all these rooms and nobody knows how to navigate from one to the other. So while we're looking at this, I think you raised a point that we need to keep in mind, and that is how we rationalize these different efforts. And that was, I think, maybe Michelle's point yesterday when she was talking, we were talking about let's put them into one category or program, strategies to reduce carbon emissions or something along that line, because I do think you get into a point of diffused accountability, or it's not clear, or we're doing it more than once in different places. So I think that's a common failing, looking back, that of how sometimes how legislation occurs over increments and periods of time. That's only my 2 cents, and it's not even Friday.
Senator Kitchell and Senator Perchlik, you definitely hit the nail on the head, and Senator Kitchell is correct, as we were discussing yesterday related to the distribution utilities and the assistance they provided us. And, we started these programs at incredibly small funding levels in terms of trying to roll out a brand new program, and, Capstone and the distribution utilities and Drive Electric Vermont, all of these organizations, have had to really pitch in ways that were above and beyond the funding that the legislature provided, because we were just on a shoestring and we really wanted to get things going. And so everybody's been really creative. But now we are finding ourselves with these successful programs, finding new and innovative ways to enhance these programs. And one of the things that has been on my mind all session is how are we going to create that consolidation framework that you talk about, Senator Kitchell, and what are the various roles that different partners are most talented at that can enhance the program in a way that will deliver the services, but not have to take on the burden of things that would be better suited in a centralized manner. So you are correct, and we will, sort of be waiting to hear what you think of our proposals. And then my intention is to put out a request for information, fairly soon in the next probably in the next month, to seek input on how these programs might be better managed and administered, and working with our partners, potentially move to a new model as we go through the next fiscal year.
Do you think that would require any, I hate instructional and gratuitous language. There's an insatiable desire to put language into bills. So that's another aversion I have. But my question is, do you think in order to move in that direction or sanction it, that you would be proposing language to be added to the T-bill or for consideration by the committee?
I would
Because
say,
if you can do it and just as part of smart administration, then you don't need to be instructed. So that's why I'm asking. I'm not a big proponent of getting into that level of detail unless you think would require some kind of a validation or whatever by the policy committee.
I don't think we would necessarily need that. We're looking internally about repurposing some of our personnel assets to be able to support this framework. And so we're not going to need any positions or anything of that nature. I think what right now, other than the administrative funds for Capstone's program being directed within statute to them, I believe, I have to think about that. If we were to come up with a new framework that relieves some of the administrative burden that Capstone is experiencing, and that they would not then require as much administrative funding, then we might want to think about the structure of that resource. But I think if everybody's working in partnership, we would hopefully be able to come up with a framework that delivers the amount of resources that everybody needs to do the role they need to do in this process.
Questions?
Amanda?
Yes, I can't see you. Go right ahead.
Well, maybe I'll talk to you offline, Michelle, and let you know what I'm thinking, and you can let me know if that's helpful or not, if we need language or not.
Okay,
For
that's fine.
Kitchell's comments.
Thank you.
But to go back to the ask, if we can, and then you can answer Senator Ingalls' question. Maybe add that. But just to be clear, in that House bill is 600,000 plus the 400 estimate rollover, but you're saying there's going to be less rollover, so it's 750,000 instead of 600,000 is what you're asking for.
That is correct.
Okay.
And Senator Ingalls, the average sale for the 50 plus cars is $17,180. The average incentive is $3,726. And the average loan taken is $11,474. And the balance would be trade-ins or client funds.
I'd love to see, and I understand, and I do. I've been in that business for 20 years at a high level. I'd love to see this get into somehow into the new car market. I know it's a high profitability for the dealers to sell the used car markets. I know that. It's how we made our living. As Senator Mazza has pointed out several different times, there's $40,000 hybrid or electric vehicles being sold for $25,000. If you could throw a $5,000 incentive on that and get it down to 20 grand, it's certainly a better return as far as interest rates and all of that for a dealer. I know you're doing all that you can do, and I'm not at all disparaging anything that you folks have accomplished. In fact, I'd just like to see the dealers work a little bit harder to get some new product into the mix. It's a better vehicle. It's got warranty. It will last longer, and the financing can be stretched out longer. So, just kind of my take on trying to get a better product for the consumers that you're servicing.
Michelle, you have a response?
Yes. Senator Ingalls makes some great points, and I think we should note that the new PEV program for new vehicles is income sensitized in terms of the incentive that's available. And so if a client of Capstone were to come in and want to buy a new vehicle, Capstone could help them use the new PEV program to get into a new vehicle. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. We just knew that in this used vehicle sector, whereby we might have Vermonters who couldn't afford to get into the new vehicle models. We wanted to create this carve-out program that was going to provide them a whole lot more hand-holding and technical assistance to be able to get into a vehicle, period, that was going to be more affordable for them. But they certainly could get a new vehicle as well.
Senator Ingalls, I just want to validate your point is so well taken, and it is part of what's happening now as we try to reach more successfully, but it also speaks to Senator Kitchell and Perchlik's point about a framework. If we were all part of one program, which we're not right now, we sort of are focused on just trying to get ours going, and those folks who really need financial assistance, and we mentioned the loan loss reserve, we're trying to help reduce risk for the dealer and the lender in some way. But in any case, all of these are really important points that we look forward to working together to continue to grow the program. And we really appreciate the support and the thought that you're putting into it.
I'm still going to voice my concern, as I did yesterday, about I favor all these incentives, and I hope to have more of these vehicles on the road, but yet we still don't have a problem solver about the how do we collect the electric tax if there is one to replace the gasoline tax, and we're that's a concern, and I don't know how we're going to address that. But I encourage electric vehicles, but boy, on the other hand, we are heading for some serious trouble if we don't address the income that we're going to lose from the gas tax and diesel tax. But I know people are working on it, but I don't know if it's fast enough, because we want this program to grow, but on the other hand, we're going to wake up one of these mornings with a lot of less money than we ever had for our infrastructure. And if we can do that, that's fine. But at this point, I don't know how we're heading down that road without a plan. That worries me somewhat. Yes.
Senator Mazza, I just wanted to remind the committee that we are going out for a consultant within the next couple of weeks to basically examine all the manners that we could utilize to implement the fee collection system that you're talking about, which we're going to bring you back choices next legislative session. And so there will be a deep investigation into how we would do it, how much it would cost, who would have to be responsible, all the operational elements, et cetera. So next session, you are going to have proposed language for, various options that you can consider.
Because I'm sure that states around us are working on the same issues we're working on to encourage electric vehicles, which is great. That's great news. And I'm sure Canada someday, when they open the border again, and all these visitors that enter our state will not be paying anything if we continue that trend. And I think it's a concern for nationwide. I know it's a concern, but I know that our income is going to decrease dramatically every year, which is good news and bad news because we don't have a replacement. It's simple as that. Yeah. Okay. Yes, Senator Perchlik.
I wanted to ask Michelle about that. Is that going to include just ways of replacing the gas tax or being incremental to the gas tax? I know AOT, and I think we exchanged an email on all the work, at the federal level, is working on this and trying to give grants to states to look at different models. But is it also going to look at the kilowatt hour fee, or is it more meta, or is it both the macro and micro look at the different options?
All right. How I would respond to that is We've already had extensive discussions with the distribution utilities over the course of about 18 months. And I think we had some of these discussions within the legislature year before last. And the collection of a per kilowatt hour fee in the home setting is not feasible within the framework of the utilities being at very different places across the spectrum. And so we are going to be, for the home charging setting, which is where 80% of your charging is going to occur, we are going to be looking at a variety of mechanisms that range from just simply adding a simple fee onto your, annual registration to cover the lost gas tax component, all the way to the use of collection based on the number of miles you drive. And there'll be sort of different options within that framework in terms of how we approach that. For the commercial side of things, we recognize that about 26% of our gas tax is collected from folks that drive through and to Vermont. And so we can't collect on their registrations any amount. And, or when they're getting their vehicle inspected, how many miles do they drive, et cetera. We don't have a system like we have for trucking for cars right now in terms of a national framework. So we will be looking at collecting the per kilowatt hour fee at the meter, like we talked about yesterday in committee. And so that will be how we will replace that element of the lost gas tax. So those are kind of the range of things we're looking at. I'm happy to send the request for proposal over to the committee so that folks understand what we're engaging with.
Yeah, because I wondered if you were combining that work, which I understand, to the other work about like a vehicle miles traveled fee or something that would replace the gas tax for everybody. Or is it all in one RFP, or is there two kind of separate things? How do we get funds from the electric vehicles separate from how do we just get funds?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So for now, we are principally focused on electric vehicles, but we would imagine that such a system could potentially be used for non-electric vehicles as well. I think that we are cautiously optimistic that there'll be a national framework for charging on a miles driven basis at some point in the future relative to federal gas tax and how we address this sort of across everyone using our roads. But we feel like we're kind of a ways from that. And, until we are moving completely away from the gas tax, we're probably going to have a two-tiered system.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Anything else this morning? Anyone else have any questions, comments? Yes.
I have one more question to Michelle about Capstone's proposal. Are she prepared to respond to that?
I think the administration did not put in a dollar amount based on what we saw as the carry forward, and Paul talked about that. It's been very difficult to gauge what level of interest there would be, and I'm very optimistic to see the February and March numbers come in so high. We understand that there would be interest by Capstone to make sure there were adequate resources for what they project to be the need. I won't go so far as to say we would be moving off the governor's recommend at this point, but I think that the data is looking much more favorable. And we agree that having an interruption in the program in terms of running out of money and then trying to wait for new money to come is very disruptive. We run into that with the new PEV program, and it's difficult for the dealers, it's difficult for the consumers, and it's an administrative burden to address. So those would be my remarks on that.
Any other questions, comments?
So I have just
Yes,
a
go ahead.
clarification. So the 600,000 was that part of the 4,775 that the House swapped? So this is T-fund money. So what we would have to do if we want to move this up to assure continuation of the program would be to increase that swap with maintenance by another 175,000, 150, I mean. That's just the mechanics of it is that I just want to make sure that my memory of yesterday is correct, that the funding for that this is part of that additional 4.75 that the House added. And it was done with general fund that had been swapped out with the highway federal highway grant of 50.4 million with maintenance to free this up. So we would have to increase that swap out.
Yes,
that-
Senator,
Okay.
Senator Kitchell, you're correct. There is no general fund involved.
I mean, I'm sorry,
T-fund.
T-fund.
Yep. That's okay.
Yes.
No, you have it
I'm-
exactly correct.
How come
Okay.
she's always correct every time she makes, how come she's always correct? I mean, just everybody notice that on the committee when Senator Kitchell says it's always correct, it's just April Fool's game.
I think it is. I'm beginning to feel like an April Fool. And I can tell you last night, by the time I got done,
God.
I was suffering vertigo so bad. I
Oh.
was like, I can't, we
That's not
can't,
good.
we can't keep doing this to, when we get
You-
scheduled
you
from
missed-
8 a.m. through lunch hour, right on through, it's,
That's the big fun because that was.
no, it's all right. I feel like an April Fool, but there's no fool like an old fool either. So
No, you're always
I guess
correct.
I fit that category.
You're always correct. I can't catch you out being correct. You know what I mean? It's hard. It's very difficult.
Oh, well, as I say, my mind is like a junkyard. Oh, I see Senator Chittenden. He says he's dying hour by hour here.
I'm fine in transportation, but by the afternoon in education, I'm just babbling.
Oh my God, education. My hat's off to you to survive all that afternoon. Oh my God.
Well,
Okay.
this is totally not related to transportation, but it's related to all of us, what we're experiencing. I listened to a speech a few years ago. It was from presented by a Harvard psychiatrist who talked about screen sucking syndrome. And he talked about just the way in which technology and being in front of a computer actually is very disruptive to trying to think things through, analytical thinking. You're constantly getting a flash that, a new emails come in, and it really is very disruptive to any kind of high level thought process. And it's also very draining. It's very enervating. And so I think we should all probably qualify or be diagnosed with what I would call screen sucking syndrome. So just to keep that in mind, but I do think it is, we're all experiencing it.
Sue, what kind of car do you drive?
I have a Prius,
Oh,
and it's a used one.
All right. I just wonder what's your son drive?
Oh, well, the truth is right now he's borrowing my Prius, which he's not happy about. But
That's not. Oh, you got to get him one of his own.
So
Well,
where is
he's going
where
to
is he
buy
in-
his own car.
where
I'm
in it, what where did he go to college, Sue?
He is at Harvard, which
Uh-huh.
is 100% remote, but he's living in an apartment down there with 2 other classmates,
Uh-huh.
and they have borrowed my Prius.
It's off live.
He used to be a